तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति हृदा जना. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on the chapter At Dakshineswar, Part 2. It is Thursday, December 27th, 1883, and we're on page 370. Sri Ramakrishna, last time we met, he had been at the house of Ishan's house, talking to his son Suresh. At dusk, the master was ready to start for Dakshineswar. He stood on the south porch of the drawing room, talking to Ishan. Someone remarked that the chanting of God's holy name did not always produce results. Ishan said, "How can you say that? The seeds of an ashwatha tree are no doubt tiny, but in them lie the germs of big trees. It may take a very long time for them to grow." Yes, said the master, it takes a long time to see the effect. That was what we finished with last time. Next to Ishan's was his father-in-law's house. Sri Ramakrishna stood at the door of this house, ready to get into the carriage. Ishan and his friends stood around to bid him adieu. Sri Ramakrishna said to Ishan, "You are living in the world as a mudfish lives in the mud. It lives in the mud, but its body is not stained." This was one of several different illustrations Thakur used to use of how we can live in the world in the midst of all sorts of difficulties and problems and difficult people and even people who are doing unlawful things and everything, and not letting it stain our minds. This is the main thing, that we have to let things slide off our backs. He gives the other illustration of the mudfish, the waterfowl that dives into the water, and even though it's underwater, as soon as it comes up, water doesn't penetrate the layers of the feathers, so it doesn't get wet. We have so many examples. The water on the lotus leaf and all of that. Yeah, to live in the world without letting the mind get affected is a very difficult thing. And we have to strike a balance between not getting affected and becoming indifferent. Yeah, it's very difficult. If we take the example of Swamiji, we can't say that Swamiji's mind wasn't affected by things of the world. It was tremendously affected when he saw the poverty and suffering and everything, but nothing on a personal level, and nothing that was any type of attachment. This is the thing, that if we have some personal interest, some ego behind it, something like that, some attachment is there, and some karma sticks to us. But if we have a little bit of detachment, even, and this is a hard thing, to be detached from our own mind, that the mind will react seeing suffering, and yet at the same time, we know that we're the witness of everything, and the real self can't be tainted by anything. Part of this is the attitude of the jnani also, that if I know that I'm the witness, the real self, that self is this Atman is never tainted by anything. So partly a question of identifying with that. But all of these ideas, these questions of not being affected by the world, I think it all comes down to this idea of ego and affected on a selfish level, ego level. if we're very pure in heart, and the reaction that we get to seeing suffering is a very pure reaction of really love and sympathy and everything, it won't leave that type of mark that Thakur is talking about.
So is it like tolerance and indifference?
Indifference, we don't want to be indifferent. Tolerant, I won't use the word tolerance. We don't want to be we want to be, this is that engagement and disengagement. This is what Swamiji says, learn to be attached and detached, both. Have the power of equal power of detachment and attachment. Because there's always the danger that we become a little inward and it becomes a little indifferent. That we put so much emphasis on our own spiritual life, we don't care about other people. This is why in our order, the twin ideal of the order, each balances the other one. Caring about the welfare of the world and also striving for a realization that if too much of one, it needs a little of the other to counterbalance it. Otherwise, striving for realization, we may become a little bit indifferent to the world, and just caring about the world, then we lose the real goal of life and what we're really trying to do in this lifetime. So we need both together. To live in the world as the mudfish lives in the mud. It lives in the mud, but its body is not stained. It really is a question of the mind. So the mind is not stained. Of course, we shouldn't think that we can do all sorts of evil things and that none of this karma will stick to us because we're not attached. This is theoretically, if there's no attachment, then none of these things won't stick to us. But there won't be any motive if we really live that way. There won't be any motive to do anything. Of course, we read in Gita, whatever we do, that there'll be something negative to it. There'll be some dosha, dosha that's connected with whatever we do. And just as you can't have fire without some smoke, that it has to be there. So we try to be detached from it and not cling to the fruits and not have any. Our motive should be pure for what we do, not have any ulterior or selfish motive for things. There are both Vidya and Avidya in this world of Maya. Now, this is another one of the favorite doctrines of Sri Ramakrishna, that when we talk about Maya, Thakur, generally he's talking about just this relative universe. In this context, just this relative world. Sometimes he'll use the term lila instead. So everything in this relative world falls within Maya, within time, space, and causation. That everything is subject to change and come into existence, go out of existence. It's a combination of parts. All of the things that we know are opposed to what's called in the Nitya, the absolute. So he's talking about a very broad thing within this Maya, within this relative universe. There are things that are helpful, there are things that are not helpful. Vidya, Maya, the types of Shakti, I'll use the term Vidya Maya Shakti, Avidya Maya Shakti. There are different types of things that will get us more attached to the world, and there are things that will release us from the world, from this type of attachment. So we have to. This is part of this process of discrimination, knowing what will help us and what will drag us down. And in very, very simple terms, we can just talk in terms of sattva will pull us upward, and tamas will drag us down. Rajas, they say, it keeps us in the middle, but rajas actually pulls us down. So in Gita, they say that's kind of in between, but real rajas is also not helpful. In Thakur's illustration, this tamas will kill us, but rajas binds us also, and the sattva can release us. So this is sattva will be this vidya aspect of Maya. This will be the thorn that removes the other thorn, because we can't get out of our problems in this relative world without doing it through the relative world. We can't defeat the attachment to the mind without using the mind. So there's a higher level of mind that will help us get out of it. This is that Vidya aspect. And the mind which is attached to the world and full of desires, that'll pull us down. That's Avidya. So there are both Vidya and Avidya in this world of Maya. Who may be called a Paramahamsa? He who, like a swan, can take the milk from a mixture of milk and water, leaving aside the water. He who, like an ant, can take the sugar from a mixture of sugar and sand, leaving aside the sand. So this is viveka. This is what we call discrimination, discernment. That we're always faced with the different choices and options, and uh, this is what distinguishes uh, intelligent people, adult people, thoughtful people, considerate people from others. The choices that we make. You can almost say we are define ourselves. We are defined by the choices that we make. And if we choose the selfish as opposed to the unselfish, then uh, we'll be going to the side of avidya and not vidya. That's all. And this is how we form new samskaras and how we uh, change our character and nature and how we develop in spiritual life, how we transform ourselves. So this is a type of vichara that Thakur likes. We'll see later if we get to it. When he tells M, don't do this vichara anymore. It's not this type of vichara. This, he says, constantly we have to discriminate. Constantly, whenever we have to decide what to do and what not to do. What is it that will take us higher, and what is it that will drag us down? What is it that is selfish? What is unselfish? We have all different criteria to use.
What is the interrelationship between sanskaras and passions, and how do they affect each other?
Samskaras and fashions.
Passions.
Passions. Uh-huh. Yeah, the passions, on one level, we can say that the passions are natural to everyone, uh, just because we belong to this human race, which is part of this animal race, you can say. So passions are something that everybody has to a certain degree. These samskaras, these will be the things that uh, will develop depending upon what we do with these passions. If we develop the power to control them, if we develop the power to transcend them or give them a different twist, go in a different direction, we'll develop different samskaras. Samskaras, different tendencies, but these passions are universal, but different in degree with different people. So we see that there's some people who just seem to be very much free from the passions. And this again, we can explain in terms of how much of rajas and tamas there are. So the passions uh, are something that we don't have to always trace back to behavior and this and that. They seem to be natural to the human being. You know, I use this. I came up with this concept of Darwinian samskaras. Uh, just being part of this animal kingdom and this human race that we're born with these different tendencies, which allow the race to continue. This protection of the species and all of these different things uh, that we know. So yeah, the passions. This is a battle that we do with the passions. Sri Ramakrishna likes this idea of utilizing them because they're natural to us. Emotions also, passions and emotions are very similar. Uh, we were reading the other day about Swami Turiyananda that he said, I was amazed when Sri Ramakrishna said, try to, when you have a feeling of lust, try to increase it tremendously, increase it as much as you can, but direct it to God. Because what is it? It's a desire to have that ultimate enjoyment and possession, God. So uh, if we try to fight these passions all of the time, then uh, depending on how strong they are and how strong our mind is, then either we're successful or we get frustrated and Uh, this human machine that we are has a few elements to it that are not very helpful. That it's not a perfect machine, and we're either born with or we develop it from a young age because of the mind going outward, whatever it is. But we have they're called the enemies. Huh? Shadripu, these six enemies, the foes, that they attack us to us, and those who are very pure, they don't have to deal with it so much. But everybody has to deal with it to a certain extent. This is just the nature of what it means to be a human being. The passion. Samskaras are really things that we can trace back to our own activities and decisions that we make, things that we do in life. We have certain tendencies based on our either this lifetime or a past lifetime.
So temperament will be a composite of these?
Temperament is if you take the all of our samskaras together and try to create some type of personality or something out of it, yeah, it'll be something like that. But Thakur is not terribly in favor of just going to battle against the passions and things like that. He's more in favor of give it a different direction or give the mind something better. For he says that we have these two great magnets. One is the world and one is God. And this magnet of God is much greater. But we have to at least get closer to it, and then we'll feel the pull. We have to do a little bit ourselves. Otherwise, this pull of the world and enjoyment is very strong. So this is a dilemma of being a human being. We're caught in between, pulled in two directions. We have the desire to go higher and higher and higher, and then this mind and lower elements or passions are trying to pull us down. So it's a constant battle, by the way. This is why if we can practice some type of surrender, if we have the holy company, if we go into solitude, there's so many things that Thakur says. It's to help us win that battle somehow, and to give the mind a twist and feed the mind, give the mind something that's more tasty. This is Thakur's way of looking at it. It was evening, and the master stopped at Ram's house on his way to Dakshineswar. He was taken to the drawing room, and there he engaged in conversation with Mahendra Goswami. Mahendra belonged to the Vaishnava sect and was Ram's neighbor. Sri Ramakrishna was fond of him. Master, the worshippers of Vishnu and the worshippers of Shakti will all ultimately reach one and the same goal. The ways may be different. The true Vaishnavas do not criticize the Shaktas. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he had a tremendous respect for Goswamis. When he would meet them, he would bow down before them and everything, because they traced their lineage back to either Advaita or one of the companions of Chaitanya Deva, and he just had tremendous respect for them. At the same time, he always seemed to have in the back of his mind this idea that they were a little one-sided, and that they were a little fanatical and didn't have such a broad liberal attitude that everyone will attain realization. It was a little bit that you have to follow our path if you want to really attain anything in spiritual life. They had that attitude a little bit. We don't know if with this Mahendra Goswami, but anyhow, Sri Ramakrishna very often will emphasize that point, that to open up their hearts a little bit, make them a little more liberal. So he says the worshippers of Vishnu and the worshippers of Shakti. Now this is especially the clash that for many reasons. The one, Vaishnavas and the Chaitanya school Bengal are usually very strict vegetarians, and the Shaktas, they'll take goat meat and everything else. Not everything else, of course, not beef, but this is one thing. And their Krishna is very sweet and loving, and his mother Kali has a sword and bloody and everything. So they're very different types of attitudes, and they often clash. Shaktas also uh, will have their own type of fanaticism. You remember once there was a meeting between Thakur had Mathur Babu, and Vaishnav Charan. I think they were together eating or something, and then somebody wanted Vaishnav Charan said something like, "No one will achieve anything in spiritual life without accepting my Krishna," or the other said something with my mother, and Thakur laughed and poked them and everything. And yeah, so there's a little fanaticism was there in some villages. Let's say where Sri Ramakrishna grew up, there wasn't too much of this clash between the different communities. Other places there could be, it could be a strong Vaishnava village or something like that, a Shakta village. And during Ram Prasad's time, there was one Vaishnava who used to follow him around, and when he would compose a song, he would compose the opposite song. We know that Mansion of Mirth and Framework of Illusion, these two things. So there was always a little bit of tension, and the two communities didn't mix too much. In Bengal, the Gaudiya Vaishnava community, they really stayed to themselves. They have their own dress and their own marks and everything. And so Thakur, he of course, he loved both ideals equally. We may say Divine Mother was nearest to his heart, but so much of his spiritual practice and everything was from the Vaishnava tradition also.
You find the image of Kali Krishna.
There are so many beautiful songs also that stress this idea that Mother Kali and Krishna are both black. The Shama, there's the oneness between them. And Thakur liked these songs. Somebody wrote a book called The Flute and the Sword about this. It's not really a big tradition, but there were some who saw them both as one somehow. Yeah. Oh, what is it? Something where? Why have you given up your wildflower garland for the garland of skulls? Addressing either Kali or Krishna as the same person. Yeah. So a little bit of that tradition, but that's the exception. Goswami smiling. Shiva and Parvati are our father and mother. Sri Ramakrishna, out of his stock of a dozen English words, said sweetly, "Thank you." And then he added, "Yes, father and mother." Goswami. Besides, it is a sin to criticize anyone, especially a devotee of God. All sins may be forgiven, but not the sin of criticizing a devotee. And now, those who are very narrow, they'll take this to mean other Vaishnavas. But we can say this Goswami is much more liberal than many. Master. Now, he'll go off on sin. Sin is another thing that is a little bit emphasized in this Vaishnava tradition, this idea of looking upon ourselves as very lowly sinners, or just this too much emphasis on humility. Oh, we're nobody, we're nothing, we're sinners. This idea. Thakur didn't like that. That was one of the elements that he didn't like very much. Master. But this idea of sin does not by any means affect all. For instance, the Isvara Kotis, such as incarnations of God, are above sin. Sri Chaitanya is an example. When Thakur uses this term, Isvara Koti, and incarnation of God, he's really talking about these ever-free souls who don't come into this world bound by karma. They come into this world with some special mission to perform. And these are people who won't do anything that we can say is sinful. But if we look at Sri Krishna Gita, that he's asking Arjuna to kill people. Now, if we want to say that there's something sinful or bad about that, that type of thing can't cling. There'll be no effect to someone like Krishna for something like that, because this is for the purpose of the salvation of Dharma, and it's not out of greed or any desire for power or anything like that. It's a different type of thing. But otherwise, we naturally assume these great souls, they won't do anything that anyone would consider to be sinful. But the point is that if they don't have this ego feeling, that no karma will cling to them, regardless of what it is. But this is the big test. If somebody says that I'm beyond good and evil, I'm beyond sin, I can do whatever I want, and nothing will affect me, and they go and do all sorts of nasty things, we know that's hypocrisy. If they reach that stage, there will be no incentive to do anything that's not good for people, and everything they do will naturally be beneficial to the world.
These Isvara Kotis, do they always accompany Avatara or can come at other times too?
Isvara Kotis, we don't know much about these things. The ideas, they come along with the avatar. We have different terms. Nitya Siddha is another term that, the idea generally is they come with the avatar. Is it the same group every time? Do they pick up some new ones? Did they lose a few old ones? We can't say much about these things. Can somebody become a Nitya Siddha? Does it mean that they've always been free? We don't know how these things work, really.
The Siddha is, he was always.
No,
Maybe
no. Actually, no, Nitya Siddha also, that I think Swami Sharanandi says, either they were born perfect or they'll attain perfection, but they won't attain liberation. Yeah, it sounds Nitya Siddha, it sounds like it should be eternally perfect. But we have this idea of the two ways. And these are all our categories. We see these great souls and we come up with our own categories. We don't know really how these things work. We may claim to know it and we may have faith in it and everything. Even this idea of avatar, it can be understood in so many different ways. Yeah. We have this feeling, of course, that there'll be some souls that will be attracted to others, these great souls, and they'll come along with them, something like that. Do they always want to? Is it their own choice? Maybe, maybe not. We have one very interesting conversation between Holy Mother and Ras Bihari Maharaj. Swami Arupanandi, he was one of the closest monastic disciples to Holy Mother. And one day he was saying, Mother, I don't want to be born again, I won't come back. She said, you have to come back. When I come back, you'll have to come back. I don't want to. He said, you have no choice, you'll have to come back. Something like that. So anyhow, we don't really know how these things work very well. Thakur, we go by what he said because he had the inside track on these things. He had some knowledge of these things that we don't have. But it's interesting that Thakur is mentioning Chaitanya Deva, who is not listed, of course, as one of the 10 avatars or anything like that, but Thakur accepted him. And of course, in the Vaishnava tradition in Bengal, he's considered to be one of the main avatars. They don't restrict the idea of Dashavatars. This is more of a Puranic idea. In the Gita, in every age, there'll be new avatars. A child walking on a narrow ridge and holding to its father may slip into the ditch, but that can never happen if the father holds the child by the hand. This is also a difficult concept. And how do we practice this? I mean, for us, we have to cling to God. And then at some point, we'll reach a higher level where we're incapable of even doing that, and that's when God will hold us. But these are very difficult things to put into practice. How do we put that into practice exactly? With full dependence on God, without even making any effort on our part, a very high stage. And as long as we have some feeling of I, we have to make an effort and take some responsibility. And then we say, yeah, that I'll do my best to remember God and to rely on God, and whatever happens, to accept it. And this is all we can do. If we want to become like small children and not do anything without the mother leading us by the hand, that takes some grace for that to happen. That's not a
In
simple.
certain cases, Guru can help this process, right?
The Guru can help, of course. This through the grace of the Guru. See, they talk about Sri Ramakrishna, what he could do. Now, he's not an ordinary Guru, but there's so many cases they talk about. They would go to him, the direct disciples, and say, "This, what do I do about lust?" And he'll take care of it. And then he'll say, after that, I never felt it again. So this is, of course, a very rare thing. We don't find this else. But otherwise, the Guru gives us that real strength, and Guru gives us that ideal to follow. And depending on what type of faith we have, we look upon the Guru as Satchidananda. We're supposed to really have that feeling. And the prayers of the Guru, of course, if we know the Guru is really our best well-wisher, then of course it has to be beneficial for us.
Maharaj,
Yeah.
In the case of these great saints,
Hmm.
the saints themselves are well known, but they always pay tribute to their gurus,
Hmm.
and in some of their bhajans and all, whatever they have composed, you can clearly feel that they have gotten guidance or grace of the Guru when they needed it.
Yeah.
Though those gurus themselves are more or less unknown.
Yeah. See, the grace of the Guru may depend more on the devotion of the disciple. There may be a worthless Guru, maybe a half phony Guru, and if the disciple really has that love and devotion, the disciple will gain tremendously from it.
But will it be from him?
No,
From God?
no, then it'll be from the God dwelling within the heart of the disciple. Yeah. So, we have that very funny statement. Jodapi amar guru, shura bari jai, totapi amar guru, nityanandorai. Even if my guru goes to the grog shop, still I look upon him as the embodiment of bliss, the eternal bliss and everything. Or the other way around. So, no, we see this, that same thing with prayer. How much is it that God is answering our prayer, and how much of it is the power of the prayer, of the person who's praying? How much devotion and love and faith they have, that prayer itself will be the catalyst for change, not so much that it's answered by anybody. So the same thing. A lot of it is our attitude and our conviction and our love and our devotion and everything. Yeah. But of course, if we have a real loving Guru who guides us and everything, then we really feel safe. There's a tremendous help in spiritual life.
So they say in the end, Ishta and Guru, they merge in each other. Right?
Yes. And in our tradition, of course, we're supposed to look upon the Guru as his embodiment or symbol for the Sri Ramakrishna, that his power is coming through the Guru also. Listen, I prayed to the Divine Mother for pure love. I said to her, here is thy righteousness, here is thy unrighteousness. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Here is thy purity, here is thy impurity. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. O Mother, here is thy virtue, here is thy vice. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Now, what does it mean to give up dharma, adharma? It means to go beyond all of these things, to not be stuck in this thing. These are actions I should do. These are prohibited actions. Everything can go beyond all of that. But what do we mean by pure love? This is a very interesting question. This Shuddha Bhakti. What does Shuddha Bhakti mean?
Love for love's sake.
You're not asking for anything.
Love for
Okay,
love's sake.
these are two different answers and two very good answers. And what is in Thakur's mind when he says it, we don't know exactly. One is that pure devotion unmixed with jnana. This is one idea. And the other is this, what he calls ahetuki bhakti, that motiveless love, that we love someone, we don't ask for anything in return. The other idea is that we don't care to follow any of this path of knowledge, this I am he, any of that type of stuff. We simply want the devotional attitude. We don't care for this jnana yoga at all. We only want bhakti yoga. This is one idea of this Shuddha Bhakti. I think Thakur, sometimes he'll talk that way, but we were talking about it earlier. Those sometimes they'll ask, I only want this purely. But you have to know God to love God. There has to be some jnana there. But this other idea, this ahetuki bhakti, that there's no motive behind our love. We love because we want to love.
And also, if there is strong body consciousness, you can't love God like that.
Yeah. So there has to be this purity of heart, of course, is part of that. The Thakur used to talk about these three different types of love based on the three different types of the gopis. That some of them, they wanted to serve Krishna because it brought them great pleasure. And they're jealous of all the others. Then the in-between ones, they got great joy out of serving him, but they wanted him to have joy out of their service. And then Radha was the highest. She only cared about the happiness of Krishna. So that'll be one idea of this Shuddha Bhakti. But then, did the gopis, and another interesting question, did they look upon Krishna as God himself? Knew that they were worshiping God and serving God himself? We read in the Bhaktis, the Narada Bhakti Sutra, that unless they had some idea of the divine within Krishna, and then it's a simply ordinary type of love. And then on the other hand, Sri Ramakrishna emphasizes this idea that they didn't care to say, oh, he's the Supreme Brahman, we don't care about that. We want our Krishna that we can play with. And this. So different attitudes. Huh? Huh? But Thakur talks about that. That when the Narada will come and say, well, don't you know he dwells within your heart? He's the Supreme Brahman. Don't tell us all that. We don't care for that. We want our Krishna, our friend, and everything to serve him.
If they have resisted all these social customs and run to Krishna at dead of night,
Yeah.
then they must have heard something.
Yeah, so our Swami Bhaswananda, he's on the other school. Yeah, they're both different attitudes. We can appreciate both attitudes. We can appreciate both ideas. That intimacy of the relationship is gone. See, if Mother Yashoda looks at the baby Gopal and is reminding herself or get that idea that, oh, this is God himself that I'm serving, then loses the sweetness. So this part of this Vaishnava tradition is to hide this attitude a little bit. Yeah. Sorry, anything?
No.
No, but did, Krishna from time to time showed his wish fruit to Yashoda when he opened his mouth.
Yeah.
Did he ever show it to the gopis? No.
I don't know.
Doesn't say so.
Yeah, that I don't know. No, but it had to be
Is one thing,
the divine love. It was,
the spirit is another.
But it was not an ordinary human love. We know that.
Mm.
It's the pull of the divine somehow. Anyhow. Goswami, yes, sir, that is right, Master. You should undoubtedly bow before all views. So again, he's going back to this idea, take a liberal attitude. But there is a thing called unswerving devotion to one ideal, nishtha. This is nishtha is something that is very, very important. That if we're so liberal that we say every path is equally good, that I like them all the same, and we don't get any fervor in our spiritual life. We may say that they're all equally good, but not for me. This is the one for me. And we really should be established in that mood. And whatever it is, whatever spiritual attitude we have, that we have to stick to that. And we have to go very deep within. The nishtha is really what carries us along in our spiritual practice. Having that very special love for Ishtadevata. We may say that yes, you can, anybody can get it by worshiping any avatar or any aspect of God, but for us, this is the one that we feel as something special. This is the relationship that we have, and Thakur says because of that we can respect every other view. He gives that example that the daughter-in-law in the household, she serves all of her husband's relatives because they're related to him. But it's all through that relationship. Her real love is devoted to the husband. That's a different type of relationship. But because of that, she serves and respects everybody in the whole family. So that'll be the same type of thing. That Thakur wants him to be. There's Goswami. He's telling him, yeah, respect all different views and everything, but we shouldn't water anything down. We still have to have a special relationship, hidden relationship. And not that we go about telling people, oh, don't you know this is the best way to worship God? That because it's a personal thing. It may not be for other people. So there's a thing called unswerving devotion to one ideal. True, you should salute everyone, but you must love one ideal with your whole soul. That is unswerving devotion. Hanuman could not take delight in any other form than that of Rama. Yeah, we know that story, huh? When Krishna said to Rukmini, you better take the form of Sita, I'll take the form of Rama. Hanuman's coming, he won't want to see us in this form. That's a little bit fanatical, of course, a little bit. But still, it shows that what tremendous devotion that Hanuman had to that aspect of God is Rama. The gopis had such single-minded love for the coward Krishna of Vrindavan that they did not care to see the turbaned Krishna of Dwaraka. Same person, huh? But even then. A wife, here it is. A wife may serve her husband's brothers by fetching water or in other ways, but she cannot serve them in the way she does her husband. With him, she has a special relationship. Ram treated the master to sweets. Sri Ramakrishna was ready to start for Dakshineswar. He put on his woolen shawl and cap and got into the carriage with M and the other devotees. Ram and his friends saluted the master. Now remember that M is now with Sri Ramakrishna, I think since December 12th, something like that. This is next entry is Saturday, December 29th. So he'll end up staying, I think, 3 weeks with them. This is a one long stretch. It was the day of the new moon, auspicious for the worship of the Divine Mother. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna got into a carriage to visit the temple of Kali at Kalighat. We were talking about that Kalighat. It is a fantastic image that the tongue of Mother Kali goes all the way to the ground. Yeah, golden, huh? A golden tongue. It's really fantastic. And you feel some Shakti there. That it's, it's a very powerful place. I haven't done it for a while, but it used to, every trip I went to Kolkata, I would go to Kalighat. And I lived in ground floor of a house that was owned by the people who he was a real Kali Bhakta. Every Saturday night he would go to the Kali temple. I went with him a few times also. Yeah. The Kalighat, a very old temple. Some people think that the word Calcutta, Kalighat, comes from Kalighat. I don't know. He intended to stop at Adhar's house on the way, since Adhar was to accompany him to the temple. While the carriage was waiting near the north porch of the master's room, M went to the master and said, "Sir, may I also go with you?" Okay, so this is, so they're in Dakshineswar, and he was going to visit the Kali temple, Kalighat, and to stop at Adhar's house. So M says, may I also go with you? And Master, why? Now he knows, he can read M's mind. M has been away from his family now for this whole long length of time, wife, other children, and everything. M, I should like to visit my home in Calcutta. Now, not such a bad thing, huh? But Sri Ramakrishna, this is putting the final touches on the training of M, I think. This one long period at Dakshineswar. And he doesn't want anything to spoil it. Huh? Sri Ramakrishna reflected a moment and said, "Must you go home? Why? You were quite all right here." So he doesn't go. M wanted to see his people. Now, usually M doesn't tell us personal things, but M wanted to see his people a few hours, but evidently the master did not approve. That's the only entry for that day, because Thakur left him behind. It's not that he wanted to go with Sri Ramakrishna, but it wasn't that far. Of course, Kalighat and M's house are not close to each other, but maybe Adhar's house. Yeah, Adhar's house and M's house were close. So while they were there, he was going to sneak and go and see his family and everything. So Thakur knows he'll be going soon enough back to the family. Okay, Sunday, December 30th, 1883. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, M was walking up and down under a tree. A devotee came to him and said that the master had sent for him. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, while M was walking up and down under a tree. A devotee came to him and said the master had sent for him, and went to Sri Ramakrishna's room and found a number of devotees there. He saluted the master. Ram, Kedar, and others had arrived from Calcutta. Ram had brought with him the Vedantist monk whom the master had visited near his garden a few days earlier. You remember he liked the sadhu very much. They walked arm in arm. They had a nice conversation. And he said, "Please come visit me sometime." So they did it. He said yes. And they actually arranged it. On that occasion, Sri Ramakrishna had asked him to bring the sadhu to Dakshineswar. Yeah, they just found him sitting on, they had these like wooden cots outside sometimes near the garden area, and he was just sitting there, the sadhu, maybe sleeping in the garden at night or something like that. The monk was sitting on the small couch with the master. They were talking happily in Hindustani. Master, what do you feel about all this? Monk, it is all like a dream. He introduced himself as a Paramahamsa. That means that he's not a sectarian type of sadhu. It'll be more Vedantic, Jnani type of sadhu. So they'll follow this idea a little bit, that this world is swapnavat. This world is like a dream. Master, Brahman alone is real and the world illusory. So he's quoting this famous line. Well, sir, what is Brahman? Monk, Brahman is the sound. It is Om. Now, this is one particular way of explaining Brahman, actually more a way of explaining Om. We can say Om is a sound symbol for Brahman, but he's explaining it this way. Master, but there must be something indicated by the sound. Isn't that so? Now, normally we say that every word stands for something. Paripadya. There'll be some reference. There'll be something. We say the word chair, and there's an object chair. So if this Om stands for Brahman, then it's not just a sound; it's Brahman itself. But this word Om is a little bit different. So he gives an interesting answer. He says that itself is the thing indicated as well as the indicator. So those who follow this type of meditation and spiritual practice, Om is the Shabda Brahman. The sound itself is identified with the Brahman. It's not a word like an ordinary word that indicates a particular object. They identify the two together. And this Shabda, it doesn't have to be an Ahada Shabda. It's not the type of Shabda that we know, ordinary word. That this will be some type of primordial vibration that was responsible for the creation of the whole world. There are all different theories like that. Now, what does Sri Ramakrishna think? That itself is the thing indicated as well as the indicator. At these words, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi. We may think he'll say, no, my dear, that does not have been, but just hearing that, then that triggered in his mind this idea of the infinite absolute. That this Om is not an ordinary word, and it doesn't stand for anything in particular. It somehow is identified with his infinite. At these words, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi and sat motionless. The monk and the devotees looked wonderingly at him in his ecstatic condition. Kedar said to the monk, "Look at him, sir. This is samadhi." Now, this samadhi is something that all of these Vedantists knew about, but how many had ever seen anybody in that state of samadhi? It's a very, very rare thing. We don't know if they're really. We see many instances of people going into ecstasy and trances and singing and all sorts of things, but this real samadhi that Thakur would have is a very, very rare type of thing. I remember a very funny thing. Well, I had visited the New York Center many, many years ago. This was when I was before joining, and Swami Swananji was there. He spoke there, and then there was a little session in the library afterwards. People could ask him questions, and somebody was asking him about this samadhi, and have you seen people with the samadhi and everything? And Swami Swananji, sometimes he get like that, get bug-eyed. You look at it, he said, you think it's such a common thing, the samadhi? He said, your heart stops beating, your breath stops, there's no pulse, you're as if dead to the world. He was like that. He says, not such a common thing. Yeah, many were seeing Sri Ramakrishna samadhi, they didn't know what to make of it. Yeah. The monk had read of samadhi, but had never seen it before. After a few minutes, the master began gradually to come down to the normal plane of consciousness. He said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, I want to be normal. Please don't make me unconscious." Of course, that means to the outer world. He wasn't unconscious. He was one with consciousness. "I should like to talk to the sadhu about Satchidananda. Mother, I want to be merry talking about Satchidananda." Yeah, Thakur, his mind would so easily go into that state that he had to do things to keep it down. He had to really make an effort sometimes to keep the mind from going into that state. The monk was amazed to see the master's condition and to hear these words. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "Please do away with your I am he, with your soham. Do away with your soham." Now, it's not that Sri Ramakrishna didn't like this attitude. Maybe he saw for this sadhu that it was something that he wasn't qualified for, that because of that, he wasn't enjoying this bliss of communion with God. Well, we just guess sometimes why he says things like that. I think the joy of communion with the Divine Mother was so great that Sri Ramakrishna felt sad when he saw people that, because of this idea of the jnani, that they couldn't have that experience. So anyhow, it says, please do away with your I am he. Let us now keep I and thou to enjoy the fun. A little later, the master was walking in the Panchavati with Ram, Kedar, M, and the other devotees. Master, to Kedar with a smile, what did you think of the sadhu? This Kedar is a very complex person. He had some high opinion of himself a little bit. He had joined lots of other different groups at different times. He did some weird things. He held on to Thakur's toe one time to get some power. He had a little group that in Dhaka they would come and they would bring things for him and everything. So his little sometimes Thakur really praised him. One time he said, "Get him away from me," and the Kedar said, "What did the master say?" So it's but he's a little bit judgmental, you can say. So Kedar, it is all dry knowledge. So he's looking down upon the sadhu a little bit. He's probably young. We get that impression, and probably on the young side. The pot has just been put on the fire, but as yet there is no rice in it. So Thakur would say, Master, that may be true, but he's renounced everything. So, yeah, you want to start criticizing him? What have you done? Yeah, but at least he's renounced the world. He's doing this in search of the highest goal of life. Yeah, he's not doing it in a very nasty way to this Kedar. Not like he's really criticizing him, but he's setting it straight.
When you tell a sadhu in front of people that the pot is there, but there is nothing inside.
Yeah, the sadhu's not there anymore.
The others are not.
No, he had left. This is afterwards, but still, yeah, it's maybe not disrespectful. He's giving his honest opinion, but Thakur used to say that even sadhu who doesn't do any spiritual practice, at least having given up the world, that there's something to be admired about that. Even though other times he'll say if he doesn't do spiritual practice, then you have to say, but he did have that respect for him. That may be true, but he has renounced everything. He who has renounced the world has already made great progress. The sadhu belongs to the stage of the beginner. So he's taking a very mature view. Don't judge him too harshly. That at this beginning stage, he's a very sincere person, nice sadhu. Thakur liked him and everything. This is the path that he's on. The sadhu belongs to the stage of the beginner. Nothing can be achieved without the realization of God. When a man is intoxicated with ecstatic love of God, he doesn't take delight in anything else. Then Thakur sings a song. Cherish my precious mother Shama, tenderly within, O mind. May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude. See, Thakur, this idea of aswad rasa, this idea of tasting that sweetness of this relationship was so enjoyable to him. It was just that he just felt, I get the feeling that he felt that those who follow the dry path of knowledge were just missing out on the sweetness of this relationship, of calling upon God as mother or any of the other relationship. Not that it wasn't a good path, a very hard path. Not many people could follow it, but that there's this beautiful sweet element that's missing.
But there has to be some joy. Otherwise, who can follow that? Ashokanandaji also says it is the Jnana Yoga path is not as dry as it is.
Yeah, I think when you say when it's dry, it's those who just engage in philosophy.
Yeah,
those who have the realization of the self, that'll be also very sweet. It has to be. It has to be.
They also have the same idea about bhakti. They say just because you cut capers like a monkey, doesn't mean you're a devotee.
Yeah. So we have to balance things. Look at both sides of it. But in general, yeah, why do people follow this path of Jnana Yoga? Sometimes they have no interest in personal God. Sometimes they like to use this intellect. It appeals to the logic, appeals to them. How many of them get the sweetness of it? How many of them, even those who worship personal God, how many? You have to be advanced to really get the sweetness from it.
I've met a number of people who really devoted to Ramana Maharshi's
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
They are by no means dry.
No. I met our Detachment Swami once. Great Jnani in Advaita. Very sweet, loving nature. Yeah. No, this is true, but these are very advanced souls. Yeah.
When Thakur makes a distinction between jnana and vijnana,
Hmm.
he's not talking about jnana who's striving for jnana. He actually has obtained jnana. So he says, ignorant is the one who has heard of milk.
Mm.
Jnani is the one who has seen the milk.
Mm.
And vijnani is the one who has drank the milk.
We use the term jnani in two different senses. The jnani is someone following the path of knowledge, and the jnani is also someone who has achieved that knowledge. So Thakur, sometimes the jnani will be the one who gets to the roof, and when he comes back down, he's a big jnani.
So it's higher.
But no, it's higher only from the point of view of elevation, of the ladder,
Yeah.
climbing the ladder. The other is more advanced.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Vijnani is higher than jnana.
Nah, this is also a questionable thing. That which one is really higher or lower? If we say the jnana is this nirvikalpa samadhi, and coming back down a little bit from that, it has to be a little bit lower, but it includes the other also. Anyhow, these are technical things. But the jnani can just be someone who's trying to follow the path of jnana yoga. That's also a jnani. Yeah. The term is used both ways.
So for both of them, God is a reality, basically.
If they've achieved something, yes, of course. For the jnani, the reality is one's own self. Yeah. But Sri Ramakrishna says for the bhakta, it's also the idea of oneness is there. We realize that unity when we reach the highest stage. So in a sense, we'll get to that. Well, we may not get to it tonight, but anyhow, he talks about that that this path of devotion will also lead to this Brahmajnana. Kedar repeated the words of a song in keeping with the master's feeling. How shall I open my heart, O friend? It is forbidden me to speak. I'm about to die for lack of a kindred soul to understand my misery. Anyhow, he scolds, not really scolds, he corrects Kedar so softly and sweetly. And not saying, you fellow, you're judging the sadhu, but how? But he gets his point across. Sri Ramakrishna returned to his room. About 4 o'clock, the door of the Kali temple was opened, and the master walked to the temple with the monk. So this monk is still staying at the temple area. Probably went off to have his meal or do some meditation, something like that. M accompanied them. Entering the inner chamber, the master prostrated himself reverently before the image. The monk, with folded hands, also bowed his head repeatedly before Kali. Master, what do you think of Kali? Monk, with devotion. Kali is supreme. Master, Kali and Brahman are identical. Is that not so? This, of course, was one of Thakur's great teachings, that this Shakti belongs to Brahman. We can't separate them. Monk, as long as one's mind is turned to the outer world, one must accept Kali. Very much in keeping with Thakur's understanding. As long as a man sees the outer world and discriminates between good and evil, he must accept good and reject evil. To be sure, all names and forms are illusory, but as long as the mind sees the outer world, the aspirant must give up woman. Now he's talking about for the sadhus here. The ideas of good and evil are applied to one who is still a student on the path. Otherwise, he will stray from the path of righteousness. This goes back to that earlier thing, huh? The Thakur said, here is thy virtue, here is thy vice. Thus conversing, the master and the monk returned from the temple. Master to M, did you notice that the sadhu bowed before Kali? M. Yes, sir. That's the end of that day. We'll stop. Om Niranjanam Nityamanandarupam Bhaktanukham Bhatadavikraham Ishavataram Bharaneshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasanamam. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who was stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be.